Day lunch. And then there's like, what, another 150 to choose from that week. So a lot on the table. Startupweekcha.com. Check that out. You can build a nice little schedule there and blow your whole week and not work, like I'm probably going to end up doing. More or less inevitable. Other than that, any meetups coming up that anybody wants to plug here? Yay, nay, no. Okay. Well, without further ado, we've got Tim here. Tim heads up the Open Data Initiative for the city of, this lovely city of Chattanooga. So everybody give Tim a round of applause.
Can you get, oh, there, now it is now. Okay. You can hear me okay, right? Thank you so much. So again, my name's Tim Moreland. I have a ridiculously long title, Director of Performance Management and Open Data, but mostly I just get to play with city data, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about. Title of my talks, Open Data, Who Cares? Hopefully I'm going to literally answer that question about who cares about open data, and hopefully add some folks to that list of people who care about open data, and maybe teach a little bit about what we're trying to do with the city. So I thought it might be good to start out with kind of explaining what open data is so that we're all kind of on the same board. So this is a definition that the Open Knowledge Foundation has for open data. For me, it's really about it being easily accessible. So in this digital age, that means it's online. It's free, so you don't have to pay for the data. It's non-proprietary, so you don't have to have special software to download or to read or to interact with the data. It's unrestricted, so anyone can use it. We don't really care, and it's machine readable. A pet peeve of mine is seeing open data like tables in a PDF and calling that open data. It's just a terrible thing. If any of you ever had to scrape PDFs for tables, it's a big pain in the butt. And so we try to put most of our stuff as machine readable, usually in like a CSV format or something like that, that we put out there. So. So I think one cool thing about open data and what excites me is this idea of an open platform, and that I think open data really can be that open platform. Now, open platforms are very powerful. The one that most of you, everyone's familiar with is the internet, which is a huge open platform, but there's other kind of examples of open platforms, and they show some similarities to open data. This is the interstate highway system. It was created initially to move goods and actually military people between the cities. So it was built for military use initially. It's had profound impacts on how we build cities, also how we do commerce, and just, I mean, it's a kind of been a huge thing. And it's an open platform. So by that, I mean it has those same kind of aspects we talked about open data, right? So when we had that definition up, it's free to use. You don't have to pay to get on the interstate system. It's non-proprietary. You don't have to have a certain car, like if you only Toyotas can go on the interstate, and anyone can put their car on the interstate system. It's unrestricted, and so it shares all those same things. And when you have these open platforms, people will leverage them and build on top of them, and we see that happening in the open data world as well. So one good example of that is with transit. So if you guys have ever gone to a city and used a transit system, probably you've used something called GTFS, which you didn't even know it exists. That's the General Transit Feed Specification. Back in the old days, it was called Google Transit Feed Specification because they worked with TriMet in Portland to actually develop this specification for here's how we provide open data about transit. And so, almost every single app and information that we use to interact with transit now comes through that kind of open data platform and that open standard. But also, almost more and more maps are actually leveraging open data as well. OpenStreetMap is another program you may have heard of. It's basically like a Wikipedia for maps. So a lot of web maps and applications are now building on top of that to use that data because that data is free and available for anyone who wants to kind of grab it and do stuff with it. And then one that everyone uses here is the weather, right? The weather data that our national government publishes. Think about like the whole industry that's built around that kind of one platform of open weather data. It's huge, millions and millions of dollars associated with it. So So the platforms have these really powerful multipliers, and people using them and building new things on top of them, which is exciting. This is a quote from a couple years ago. But even just yesterday, the White House had Open Data Innovation Summit, where Sean Donovan, who's the director for performance, management budget, was saying that opening data is really going to help spur what they see innovation, foster economic growth, and enhance competitiveness. So they see it as kind of something to differentiate us into the future as we think about our economic competitiveness as in the global community. So open data, it means a lot to a lot of different people. I think it's going to just keep on growing and growing. There's a great quote by Stuart Brand, who wrote this kind of hippie whole earth catalog back before the internet, and it says, information data wants to be free. And you can know this is true if you've ever had a secret and you try to keep it to yourself. It wants to get out there. You want to tell people about it. It's hard to kind of hold it in. So data information wants to be free. It's going to keep on growing, and I think this platform is going to be really exciting. But who cares? This guy cares. This is our mayor, Andy Berg. So when he came into office, he recognized the power of open data and open platforms. And he was excited about open data being able to use that to spur economic growth and transparency in our city. And so on May 31st, 2014, he signed his 4th executive order, I think it was, kind of creating the whole open data program that the city had. It didn't exist before he came to office. So it created things which I'll go through in a little bit, and really kind of set things in motion to kind of get things going for that. One cool thing is we actually developed it with the community. So our open data portal, our open data executive order that he signed was actually built on GitHub. So people actually pushed commits and commented on it, and that's how we build it. It's a pretty cool way to build policy in the open. Not very many places do it. I think it's great for this audience, probably not for the average public, But since open data is kind of a geeky subject, we thought maybe that's our audience and we can do it there. Maybe it wouldn't work with other policies that the city wants to do. So this is kind of the timeline. We worked on it leading up to June when we actually had it. Soon after that, we did an inventory, which is posted on the open data portal. That's one thing called for in the executive order. Another thing called for in the executive order is doing an annual report, right? So every year you can see what's going on with the open data program. We just published that and got some press about it. I don't know if it was this week or last week. And then every year we also update our annual data inventory. So we have kind of those two little milestones of inventory and report going back to back. So that all happened in pretty short order after we signed this executive order and started going. So why does the city care, right? So we use it internally, it's kind of dogfooding in our open data, right? So we actually try to use the data to enhance collaboration with our departments. We optimize some of our service delivery, but we use data to look at how we're delivering services and where we can maybe make improvements. My office in performance management use it for internal dashboarding projects we have for the department, so they can kind of get a sense for how they're doing and what they need to do to kind of move towards the targets they've set for themselves. And then just general overall better decision making. And then externally, we're also hoping that it's going to do the things that you hope open data would do. Provide transparency, empower citizens, and then ultimately something that the city is very interested in is this idea of better service delivery. Delivering the best services possible to citizens, and doing that in a data-driven way. So you can do things like this with open data, right? So you can take a random day, February 24th, 2016, and find out what is the city doing on that day. I kind of love this slide because you don't really know what the city does, but here we just used open data to show you on just a random average day. This is what type of city things we do. We get 271 911 calls, 393 calls for our 301 service requests are opened. Public service requests, so Public Works was killing it that day. They closed 306 service requests. I have no idea how they did that, but they were on it. And then this is actually supposed to say work orders. I still haven't fixed that. And then they closed actually 35 work orders as well. So a lot goes on, and there's even more stuff going on. We get add other open data sets in there and get a picture for what's happening day to day. everything's built with open data or used open data kind of to look at this snapshot, except for this one piece right here. But everything else, open data. So the city's also wanting to leverage and get more value from our open data, so we're building things on top of it, right? So that platform idea, we have data, so how do we build on top of it? So we're building these kinds of things. Open data portal itself, has different kind of visualization tools that we hope people can use and that we kind of point to people to. But then we have our performance website, ChattaData, our budget website, budget.chattanooga, a little app the local Open Chattanooga built called Find Your Officer, and then another one that they did as well for CityGram, which is kind of a cool thing. It's just called Subscribe to Your City. The idea is that you go to Chattanooga, go to the URL, and then you can say, I want to find out, I think we have code violations, but we'll be adding new things there. And you can say, I want to find out when there's a new code violation in my neighborhood or something like that, and it will text you or email you or something. So those are all just built and leveraged on top of open data, which is kind of exciting and something that we're excited about doing. But so the mayor, he cares about open data. City, we care about open data. Who else cares, right? These folks care. We found neighborhood leaders to be very interested in the actual data that we're providing. A lot of it relates to things and questions they have. So what's crime happening in my community? Where are the blighted properties in my community? What's happening with my request to get something cleaned up with the city? All that data is available through the open data portal. And so neighborhood leaders are very much interested in the data and information we're providing. More and more folks are knowing about it. We've done trainings with the open data, with the kind of open data leadership in Chattanooga, and those have been really great. Neighborhoods are kind of embracing the tools on the portal itself. So it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's the most, it doesn't have the best UX design, our open data portal, but it's functional, right? And you can do things like create maps and charts and graphics with a couple of clicks, and it kind of lowers the barrier of entry to kind of having those data and visualizations available to neighborhood and community leaders. So we've been doing trainings with them. So we've seen things like neighborhoods creating kind of their own custom pages and visualizations using the open data portal for those things that they're most interested in. So one neighborhood was interested in looking at, I think it was car theft or car, anything relating to I think they're having a rash of car-related crime in their neighborhood. So they built a special page kind of showing what those values are. Then they use that to kind of engage the police and talk about what's happening in their community. So it's interesting. And then we have neighborhood leaders like this quote here where they actually we're doing more of a train the trainer kind of thing. So we're going to them and saying, here's the portal, here's the things you can do on it, here's how you can map, whatever it is you're interested in, and it will constantly update because the data updates every night. So you have new data, new maps, new information. And so that's they're actually leveraging it and using that as well. So so the city, the mayor, neighborhood leaders, they care about open data. Who else? Educators care about open data. We've had many great conversations with UTC and the professors and the different schools at UTC are very much interested in it. I think some of the researchers are interested for research, and a lot of the professors are interested for kind of using it as a teaching tool, which I think is kind of cool. Like if I'm in a statistics class, I think it'd be much more interesting to actually do statistics on open data set that relates to me, that I can kind of see what's happening in my community as opposed to just a random data set. So we're hoping more and more there will be people kind of not just universities but our other schools and we'll start leveraging this information and data as well and be using it. So actually, it's not just all these people we've been talking about, but a whole lot of other people. We've seen a massive growth in our actual open data program in the last year. So this is based on fiscal year. So the number you have to kind of change your frame, which is from July to June each year. So, but in 2015, you can see the metrics there, and then 2016 we had substantial growth. I think 5 times the page views from the previous year, 2 times the downloads. We've actually been putting more and more data on the portal, and so even though we had 2 times the downloads, that resulted in people consuming 33 times more data because there was just so much more included in that information when they downloaded it because we're providing a lot of information there. And then about 16 more people, like active users on the portal itself. So we're hoping to kind of keep the growth going. Both, the mayor said this, and I wholeheartedly agree, and I'm not, is that like open data for open by just itself is maybe just a little bit of a waste of time and waste of money for everyone. So if we just have open data out there on the portal and no one's looking at it, no one's using it, and it's just sitting there, what's the point, right? That's why we use it internally. The city uses it. We gain value from it. That's why we hope neighborhood folks use it. That's why we have it out there so that other folks can use it and actually gain value from it as well. I mean, after all, it's not our data, it's your data. It's the citizens' data. You paid for this already. This is stuff that we're collecting, and it's just making it readily accessible for folks in the city. So kind of curious, and I'm not sure what open data can do. I'm actually hoping you can maybe co-answer this question for me. But our open data portal has a whole host of information about the city and how the city operates. And I can see a lot of application where that's really useful, especially when we're talking about Startup Week and the coming activities are going to happen. If you want to know what's happening in a community or in a neighborhood or in a part of town, a lot of the data that you might want to look at for that is on there. You know, building permits. So what are people investing in the community? Crime and fire. What are the kind of safety parameters happening within that area? Code enforcement. How active or are people in cleaning up properties, and how many kind of blighted properties are there in different areas? All this information is on the open data portal, and you can access it to kind of get some really good intelligence that is available to everyone, but no one's really leveraging right now. And so this is an amazing thing, I think, for kind of entrepreneurs and people who want to work on it. As much as possible, we try to develop, for you guys, we try to use open standards, like the GTFS I was talking about, so that if you build something with our data, you can take that product into another city that uses that standard and build it there as well. So, for example, our building permit data uses something called the build standard. So if you built an application or a web app or something on top of it, you could take it to a bunch of other cities that have that same data standard and just basically consume that data from their portal, and you would have a kind of a market you could use it for. And it's all built. The other cool thing about our portal is that each data set is an API associated with it. So you can automatically interface with the actual data set and build the web apps using those APIs, which is pretty nice. So there's lots of I'm thinking of a lot of ways, but I'm kind of curious from you all, and I'm not sure how interactive sessions go during these types of things, but I kind of want to hear from you all, like what are some pain points you guys have? What are some information, like especially I'm guessing mostly talking about city information because that's kind of what we deal in mostly, but maybe other information as well, because the actual portal itself is a platform that you can actually host other information on. What information you guys have a hard time finding? What kind of information do you think would be most useful for you in some of the kind of projects or things you're interested in or just curious about? Does anyone have any thoughts there? Yep.
What about county data? Have you all done anything? Because that's where like the school data and that sort of stuff.
Health data is there as well. Yeah, there's some really good data sets for the county. We haven't had any formal conversations with the county about hosting the information. One thing you'll notice about the portal is actually it's listed at the library, and that's so that it can be used as a broader community resource, so that other folks who want to leverage our platform could use it. So people like the county or the school district would encourage and open up that platform for them to be able to host that information on the portal. But there hasn't been any formal talks with the county. But I think that's something I do hear over and over again. What about the education data? What about the county? We've had kind of informal talks, but nothing has been formalized at this point. It's a good one. Yeah?
Can you speak to the crime data and what's available? Is it geolocated, and how often is it updated?
Sure. So crime data is geolocated. We try to offset to protect the privacy of folks and victims associated with different types of crimes. So I forget what the offset is, but it's on the data set. There's a little disclaimer saying, hey, the data may be offset, but it gives you a general, I think usually within a block view of the data set. So the actual address is capped at the block level, so you don't have the exact address, and then the actual point is geocoded on the parcel wherever, then we offset it randomly within that block area. So the type of data we have is pretty much almost any kind of crime data that you'd be interested in. It should be found there. It's updated nightly. So most of and I can go into this later if you want to get into the details of a program and how it operates, but most of our data sets, we set up automation, so it's a nightly run, and then it updates nightly. There's some data sets that are older that are, like I think traffic citations hasn't been updated in a couple of years, but most of it is fairly recent and relevant. It takes longer to do it that way, but we think that's a best practice because the value of data is in its, is how often it's updated, and so we spend a little more time on the front end kind of making sure it's automated. So crime data, education data, maybe other county data like health data.
Were all these different data sets separate before, I guess, 2014? And then did y'all just make the effort to kind of integrate them all within this public data set? I mean, just like the crime records from the police, but maybe some fire, like 911 records.
Yeah, so everything's in different systems, right? So that it is all separate, and then we have to kind of combine it into this one platform. So there's the crime, there's police. Every department has their own kind of system of record that they use, and so we have to kind of learn that system, interface with it, and then automate the data. So it can be a challenge. It would be great if there was one place where it's just all the data. We talk about that in the city, this idea of a data store. We just pipe everything into one place, and that's where we pull from. But right now, we have to pull from the individual systems. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, was there any unique?
No, we haven't done that yet, right? So that's kind of the next step we're wanting to do. So one of the unique keys that we want to kind of compare data against is the address field, right? And so then we can start to do things like type in an address, and then you can get a list of kind of the history of that address. You can see number of code violations, building permits, taxes, kind of the data history of each address. So that's actually, we have a proof of concept that our IT in the city set up that's kind of leveraging doing that right yet. And eventually we might publish that as something. We're just not sure who would use it or what they would use it for. But that is something we thought about, is how do we kind of connect these data sets and start to compare them.
Well, this is a question more probably about how the city handles things, but kind of an idea that came to mind is what if, as soon as a street work order is applied for, is that entered into the data set so I can know all of these are not actioned yet, and what date they might be actionable? Because I think it'd be kind of cool to create a map of roads that would be closed with dates attached to them for bus routes or delivery.
We don't have it for roads, but for the work orders, there's a kind of initiation date, and then a projected start date, and a projected close date, and actual start and actual close. So you can kind of see the timestamp history of those types of things. It depends on the system of record we're pulling from. Some of them do that really well, like Public Works System does that really well, and other ones don't really have a well-implemented timestamping procedure for their data, and so it's harder to get that level of detail out of it. So it's kind of, it just depends on the data set and the system of record we're pulling from, I guess I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So mine would be about parking.
Yeah.
I'm a student downtown and I work downtown. And so I'm always trying to weigh the cost and how much I have to walk. And right now I just kind of park for free, walk really far. But I also know that there's Republic, there's the city parking, there's UTC parking. Is there you have data on all three of those that maybe could be combined into a map or a web app that you could use?
So we don't have any parking data other than bicycle parking, which is going to help just out a small subset of folks about what's going on in the city. The city does have, and actually I should say CARTA is the parking authority as well, and they actually interface with Republic that does a lot of that. So a lot of the data that Republic owns, some subset of that is open data related to, or open datable related to city parking lots and things like that. Then there's the private data associated with the private parking lots. I don't know if the private data would be open, but I think the public data about like street parking, on the street parking, where it's located, also public lots and things like that, I think that's all open dataable, and it's something I think is kind of would be a really cool data set to get out there and have available for folks. I can envision an app, you know, a lot of cities have this where kind of like you're put in your destination and then it tells you what your different parking options are and where to go and things like that. Some people use smart parking meters, but we don't have that yet. But we do have kind of electronic parking meters, so there's a question of like how much of that data could we pull in real time to get a sense for how active different areas are and where you might want to go. There's some cool projects there, I think. That's a good thought. Cool. Well, you know, some of the things that some of the questions you could answer with the data are these types of things. You know, I'm not going to read the list, but there's lots of things. So data, like I said, we have business data, business license data, building permits, police data, 911 calls, fire, 311 calls, let's see, all kinds of stuff. And also budget data, so if you want to get a sense for how we're spending our money, you can look at the budget, and we have some of our checkbook up there too, so you can get a sense transactionally what the city's doing, which is kind of a cool thing. It's a huge data set, and our workflow is broken right now, so you're going to get up to a point, and then we won't have any new data for that, but we're in the process of fixing that workflow. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about it, I definitely want to encourage you to go to the website, data.chattanooga.gov, and kind of check it out. So, you know, the mayor cares, the city cares, I care. Hopefully, hopefully you guys are kind of interested and also care about this as well. And hopefully I have a better sense for the data that's going on there. If you want to engage with us, we have our website, connect.chattanooga.gov/openchattanooga. You can sign up for updates there and again get a sense when a new data set comes out, and kind of we post updates on like blog updates and things that are going on with the Open Data program. So it's a good place to kind of check things out. I think we did questions, but I'll take some more. You can reach me at these venues if you want to. I'm available at all those places. And then I think that's all I have. I do have, if you want to learn, I could also go into, if it'd be of interest, because I think we have time, to kind of some of the details of how we run our Open Data program itself. So like what does the program look like? Kind of what does that nightly automation look like? And maybe show a little bit of like the portal and the type of things you can do on the portal. Would that be useful for folks? I think that might be of interest. We have time. I'm going to take your pictures because there's a reminder for me to take pictures because I never do when there's an event. So everyone smile. I can prove I was here. This really happened. Awesome.
I have one question right here.
Yeah.
So Tim, you didn't mention your bi-weekly meetup.
Oh yeah, so we do have a bi-weekly meetup. The City Hall actually hosts Open Chattanooga's Hack Night at City Hall. So on Tuesdays at 6:30 you can come and play with our open data and work on different projects. Kind of explore the open data there. Pretty wide open, so it's really like whoever shows up, that's the meeting, and that's what we're going to talk about and work on. And so if you have a pet project you want to work on or something you want to do, you just show up. And I think we're pretty nice there. So yeah, definitely come check us out. We're on Meetup. If you want to learn more about the Open Data program itself, you know, we got our actual Open Data reports. This is the older one, but we have new ones coming out. The new one came out now, so that's on the portal now. This is what Open Data looks like, right, in the city. There's lots of different people who touch it. The basic idea is that there's two reviews that the people go through with Open Data. When I first started Open Data, and this is common in most cities, when you start talking about Open Data to departments, people start freaking out, right? Like, you're going to take my data, you're going to publish it out there. Who are you? What's going? Like, I don't know. You know, I'm not comfortable with this. So we developed this Open Data workflow, and so the idea is, you know, we identify the data, we actually touch the data, export it, and actually have it before the department signs off on it. So that's really important. It's like, you know, we actually are going to take the data and do stuff with it before we give it to you. And then the important step is this number 5, right? So once we have done that and we have the data, and usually there's some conversations with the department before that, so it's not like they don't know this is happening. But we kind of say, here's the data that we've extracted. This is what it looks like. It's on the open data portal. We've automated it. What do you guys think, right? And so at this point, they're kind of reacting to something as opposed to this idea of open data. And then they can say, well, this record doesn't make sense, or this is sensitive information. You got to remove that. And we have a conversation, and we go back and forth. And there's kind of this loop that happens, hopefully not infinite loop, but that where it finishes out, and finally they're happy with the data. And they say, okay, yeah, that looks good. You can open it. So that's step one. And this is important so the departments know when we're doing open data, if we're going to open up some information, you guys get to you are involved in it and get to have say in what happens. So that makes them much more comfortable. And step two is legal review. So it's the same kind of thing that happens with the legal office when they look at it and they think about the local, state, and federal laws associated with releasing data information, and they do their review on it, and if they're happy with it, then everything's fine. When we initially, and then step 9 is my favorite, is when the data is actually made public and everybody's happy about that. When we first kind of thought about this workflow, can you guys, any ideas where the what do you call it, the kink in the open data workflow would be? Any thoughts? Attorney's office, right? Because it's everything from all the departments are going into the attorney's office, and that's where the kink's going to be. Not the case. The attorney's office is amazing. They turn stuff around and do thoughtful, fast reviews on the data, much better than our departments do. So actually, this is the hang up right here. Actually, where the departments, where it's trying to get them comfortable. What's the data? What are you doing? And how is it there? How do I get to the data again? All that kind of stuff. That actually is the hang up, which is something that we totally didn't see and didn't expect. But our Janina in the attorney's office is amazing and just does a great job. So yeah. This is kind of a schematic of what it looks like. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but we have all those different various siloed systems we talked about, right? So there are all those different ones we're pulling from. We have the platform itself, and then we're trying to build things on top of it, like the ChattaData website or our budget app and other kinds of applications pulling in from the data. This little gear represents a whole lot. That means that we do an automated process on our data. So we have an automated workflow. We try to make it as simple as possible, but it's kind of, it can get a little cumbersome. So we have a virtual server in IT that wakes up every night and starts to run some workflows. We're using an ETL tool, extract, transform, and load, called SafeFME. That's actually been one of the value adds from this program. Before this, our IT department was using a lot of just kind of coding other off-the-shelves for ETLs, and they didn't know about ETL tools available for them, and lots of their time is spent trying to get data out of one system into a different one. And so when they realized, hey, there's this tool that the Open Data Program is using and we can use it for other things, they were pretty excited, and we got some partners, which was good for us. So we use Safe. We have kind of a master-child workflow system. So there's a master workflow for our open data system, and then what that does is that starts calling all the child workflows for police, fire, and all these other ones, and they kind of run through the night. We just did a simple trigger with the Windows scheduler. And then our system, we also built into the workflows a kind of a error reporting log, so we can see what ran, what didn't run, that kind of thing, to get a sense for where we need to make some changes and tweaks. And stuff is always breaking, as you guys probably would guess. And so there's a little bit of maintenance that goes into keeping those automated workflows going. But that's basically what it looks like. It's just this kind of fairly simple thing. And then the portal itself is, pretty straightforward. You can go to the catalog and search for things. You can kind of click on different categories if you only want to see data sets, or if you only wanted to see maps or things like that. It's mobile. It's responsive. At least this version. The catalog's responsive and works pretty well on mobile. The data experience is pretty awful on mobile. So once you actually get to the data, it's terrible. But I guess that makes sense. I can't really looking at a spreadsheet on your phone. Maybe it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It will actually do kind of like in Google, when you start typing stuff, it will start suggesting searches based on kind of what's in the data portal itself, and you can filter by categories. So it's fairly simple and I think, fairly easy to use. This is the data. This is the view that most people get a sense of. This is that log I was talking about, so you can see, you know, what ran and what didn't run. But this is an example data set. You know, you have the names. You can sort by the different ones, and there's just different actions you can do with the data sets. You can click on more views to see like any visualization that or anything people built on the portal, not off the portal, but on the portal. You can see all the related data sets, like all the maps and charts and things like that. So you can get a sense for like, if you go to crime data, you can see like what are people building on crime data. And then you can do some basic filtering to kind of filter the data or combine the data into other things. And then probably the most important one is the export, right? So that's where you can actually, you know, find out how to access the API or actually download the CSV. And then if you want to, you can go to the about, which kind of talks about, it's the metadata for data. Do you guys know what metadata is? It's just data about data, right? So it's really helpful if you've never met this data set before. I feel like it's like kind of an introduction to the data set. You know, it's like, hi, I'm the crime data set, and I get updated nightly, and you know, I have this kind of parameters. So kind of that's what the metadata does. We're gonna be updating our metadata experience, so it looks more like this, where you can see the description, when it was last updated, and there's a whole host of information that'll be listed here as well. And so this will be the first view you can see, so you can actually like get a sense for what's being built with the data itself. And then you can do things like create charts and maps. This is 311 streetlight requests. The one I built that I like the best is dead animal pickup. So you can see like where all the dead animals are, and there's a nice little heat map right by Missionary Ridge, actually. So like, my theory is that the animals come down Missionary Ridge and people like smack them as they're coming down. But maybe people just really hate animals in that neighborhood and they're just, you know, going for them. I don't know. Coyotes, I don't know. But you can do mapping and things like that on the portal itself. And then you can actually, this is something new that like some of our neighborhoods, like in this case, the Missionary Ridge, it's called Data Lens. And so it's a click to query, right? So it uses a little bit of intelligence to create the charts and maps off of any data set on the fly. And then you click and query to get into it. So if you only want certain data sets for certain time periods, for things like that, as you do it, the data subsets just to what you're interested in, and you can see your query getting built right here. So for people who aren't very who aren't familiar with querying data and things like that, it's kind of an easy way for them to kind of drill down into the data set, and provides little breadcrumbs for how to do that. So those are some of the tools on the portal itself and the stuff that's there. We're constantly working on, you know, keeping it current, updating it, and seeing how things go. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And so that's basically open data. That's the program we have. We are always looking for folks to kind of interface with it and do stuff with it. You can actually suggest a data set on the open data portal. So, you know, parking and other ones, like go ahead and go on there and suggest a data set so that we have record of it. That'd be great. I think it's just right there. Suggest a data set. And that's it. So that's the open data program. Hopefully someone here cares now and will also leverage and use the data that we have available to you. I think it's this amazing resource that no one knows, that very few people know about. Now you are part of the lucky few who are well-versed in the open data portal. Any questions before I end about open data, city, what we're trying to do? Yeah. Uh-oh.
Any data sets that have been created. A lot of data may not be in place. Collected.
Not a whole lot of examples of that. One of them is a bicycle parking, right? So that, well, I guess that was already existed. So that's kind of a hybrid version. So there was a bicycle parking data set that existed, then got posted to GitHub so that people could actually update it as they needed to, and then that data set got pulled into the portal itself. So it's like the kind of publicly available version that people could edit and update didn't exist before, and then because of this process it did. But not a whole lot of other examples like that.
So, if you need to get data from companies that insist on getting paid, like maybe you wanted Republic's parking data, and they're like, well, we're going to have to get somebody to get that data and dress it up before we can give it to you, and that's not free.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of process or policy in place for that stuff?
Do you mean is there a fee for requesting data? Is that what you mean?
No, like can the city work with an organization like maybe Republic that won't give their data up without getting paid for it?
Right. Yeah, so I think that might be a way my office can interface with those types of individuals because we have experience with ETLs and cleaning up data and doing things like that. So for example, one of the data sets that is somewhat related to the city is like someone requested a list of the animals that are at the zoo. So it's kind of a quasi-governmental thing. Like we interface, we provide them data, but we don't have that data. So I took that request and reached out to them, and we've been going back and forth about the data. And now hopefully we'll have something up there soon. The last data set they sent was that PDF of a spreadsheet, which just drove me crazy. So I said, could we have this in actual, CSV or something I can open? So we'll see what happens. But I'm hopeful that, yes, to answer your question, yes, I think that's a service and something the city could help provide to kind of get other people into this space because we're excited about it and we think it provides a lot of value for folks. Yeah.
You mentioned. I don't know how city government works, but will this be available with the next mayor's administration, or does it have to be reissued with each mayor? How does the funding work?
So executive orders persist until they are changed in the next administration. So another next administration would have to actively overwrite an existing executive order, if that makes sense. So there's a little bit of consistency or a little bit of protection there. The kind of more sustainable, I guess, process would actually be going through the city council and getting it actually changed into a kind of official city code ordinance that hasn't been done yet. One way I think a lot about this is about sustainability, right? So how are we going to keep something like this going over the long term? So some of the things we've tried to do is technically that's why we do automation because if you have an open data program, it's very easy for it to get stale. And if it's based on people, like, if I need this data set, I need to call this person, and then they need to ask their boss, and their boss will tell them this person below them to send them the data, then they'll send it back to me. Like any link in that chain goes away, and then the open data doesn't exist anymore. So technically, that's why we do open data at automated way for sustainability, so that even if I leave, the open data system is going to keep on cranking out open data, right? Because we have these automated systems. So that's one. Two is users and people using the data. So that's part of why I'm here now. Is that it's going to be much harder to shut something down if it's something people value and use, right? And so that's why we work with neighborhood folks, and that's why the city's using it. And honestly, I think that would be okay, right? So if we're doing open data just for open data's sake and no one's using it, then maybe it does need to be shut down. But I think the city's gaining a lot of value from it. Citizens are gaining a lot of value from it. And there's a lot more value that could be had from it as well. So the more we can kind of engage folks to use it, that will also help with the sustainability of it.
Cool. Well, we're about out of time. Let's go to for Tim. Thanks, Tim. Guys for coming, and we'll see you next week.